Welcome back, everybody, to the 4-Star Today's Market Explained podcast and interview series. Today, rather than doing market commentary, we have a really interesting interview subject here, a gentleman named Brian Pallas. And Brian is the founder of the Worldwide CEO Network that he founded 8 years ago. And it's really an interesting story. There's lots of networking that goes on in business. But Brian has created a whole new process, and we're going to learn about that. So Brian, welcome to the 4-Stars Today's Market Explained podcast.
Thank you very much, Brian. Love your name.
Yes, good name, Brian. Brian, all the Brians of the world have to stick together, which is great. So Brian, we were discussing your organization and how you started it and why you started it. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you started the CEO Network.
Sure. So I started my career in media many years ago. And after that, I started working with my master degree in economics in consulting. I did Boston Consulting Group, BCG, for a few years. I took my MBA at Columbia Business School. I worked in investment banking, venture capital, and private equity. And then I started Opportunity Network. And Opportunity Network really is a venture that is 8 years old, but already managed to grow to be the largest community of CEOs on the planet. If you take the 53,000 CEOs that are members of our network and you sum up the revenues of these CEOs, it would be the third nation by GDP in the world, wow, just after US and China, and just before Japan and Germany.
Wow. Okay. Well, good. So, and Brian, you attended Columbia in the States, right?
Yeah, I did my MBA at Columbia Business School, which is also where I started the platform.
Excellent. But your background is Greek, and you live in Milan, Italy, and you also live in New York.
Indeed. I was born and raised in Milan. My origin is Greek. My wife is French. She lives in New York. Opportunity Network is headquartered in the UK, but we all work from Barcelona, Spain. So let's say that we are at least geographically confused.
And how many of the CEO members in the network, Opportunity Network, are European? And how many, like what percentage are European, what percentage are American, US?
Yeah, US actually represents the biggest country on the platform. Close to a third of our global membership is from the US, which also reflects the fact that US GDP is the largest. But we have members from all over the globe. We have members from 130 countries. And if you look by verticals, so you look Americas, you look EMEA, and you look Asia Pacific, you look at basically 40% from Americas, you look at the 30% from EMEA, and you look at roughly 10% from Eastern Europe and another 20% from Asia and Oceania. So it's really, really global.
Really diverse. Excellent. So and, how many are there? How many members?
There are 53,000 members, and they come from all over the globe. The international nature of our community is also reflected by international nature of our employees. We have 46 different passports in the company. So we really have a diverse culture. We have a member of the management team from every continent. We have one from North America, one from South America, one from Europe, one from Africa, and one from Asia. And that really reflects our member base. And what people really appreciate of our platform is no matter what they're trying to accomplish for their business, they're always able to find a trustworthy, reliable counterpart to do business with. And, that is really the big appeal of Opportunity Network, because we really are the only platform around the globe that is always able to find a counterpart for any commercial or financial transaction a CEO is trying to perform.
Nice. So this executive committee, what function do they have now with your network?
Yeah, so I was talking about that as like our management committee. So that's people directly reporting to me. That's just my first line of report. As a company, we are roughly 120 people, so we're not huge. but the amount of deal flow that goes through us is it's quite staggering. We're serving, several tens of thousands of members, and what we really see is that the platform hosts at any given day more than 10,000 deals, and the total value of the transactions that are going through the platform exceeds the $500 billion.
Wow. So CEOs will get together through the network and then they contact you as part of the deal. Is that how that works?
Yeah, like what we really try to do is to not act as an intermediary, but really kind of take a step back and allow members to connect with one another. So you'll have a CEO going in and saying, I want to sell my business. This is the industry, this is where it's based, and this is the revenues. And then investors will connect and potentially agree on the transaction, but we're not involved in the dialogue at all. We just make sure that both CEOs are legitimate. They are who they say they are. They're really running the company they claim they're running, and they really are doing clean business, and they have the authority to speak on behalf of the company. But then we don't get involved in the conversation. And I made the example of someone selling their business, but it could be any commercial transaction as well. So, I'm looking for a distributor in Latin America of my product. I'm looking for a producer of this and that type of machinery for a new production process. So all of that can also be done on the platform alongside investments and M&A and real estate and the likes.
Right. Nice. So essentially, the Opportunity Network is connecting leaders of businesses worldwide and wealthy investors, and then some credibility building, essentially, to make sure that they are who they say they are.
Exactly. Like one thing we're extremely proud of is that we connected two CEOs over a business opportunity more than 100,000 times. And we never had a single case of someone coming back and saying, I didn't meet the person that was who said he was, or that was able to carry the transaction forward, or that was like with like bad intentions or anything else. We never had anything of that sort. So total zero so far.
Good. And so have you had people try to join the network who were not who they said they were?
Yeah, of course. But we have a screening methodology where we filter people that apply, and we're able to accept only people that are willing and able to prove their identity, their company, the revenues. So roughly a quarter of the applications we get, we do reject.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Well, good. Well, you mentioned you connected some top CEOs. Do you have some examples, without giving us names, of things that have happened in your network?
Oh yeah, we have a lot, and it goes from the very large like financial transaction to the very small commercial transaction. And I remember this whole building in Tribeca being sold for over $1 billion. I remember an investor deploying more than $1.5 billion in an energy deal in emerging markets. So transactions that are not obvious to find the right counterpart for. But I also remember a family business based in Sicily that started exporting bluefish to Chile. So you get every side of the spectrum.
All different types of things, right?
That's the beauty.
So what are the requirements to become a member of this Opportunity Network?
Sure. So first of all, you need to be the CEO or final decision maker. So chairman, owner, executive chairman at a company. The company has to have at least 2.5 million in annual revenues in US dollars. Or if you're an investor, you need to have at least 2.5 million in liquid assets that you can deploy. So that is the minimum requirement to join the network.
Okay. Interesting. Good. And so how many of the network members are CEOs by qualification, and how many of them are investors by qualification?
So it's an interesting question, because sometimes you see people coming in as CEOs selling their business, and all of a sudden they are investors. And sometimes you see investors coming in and they buy a business, and all of a sudden they're CEOs. So from that standpoint, it's fluid, but definitely we do see a predominance of CEOs. and a good amount of investors as well. But what we have to remember is people don't join just to find investors or find people that will invest in their business. People also join to do commercial transactions and the likes, where both sides of the equations are CEOs. And also we see CEOs that are, investing or buying companies that are strategic to them in the same industry. So, from that standpoint, again, both of the counterparts will be CEOs. So if I were to give a rough estimate, probably 40,000 members are CEOs and sometimes also investors, and 15,000 are specifically just capital allocators.
Okay, investors or capital allocators. Okay. So have you seen a lot of capital allocations go through your network? You're involved in it?
Yeah, we've seen a lot and we are not involved in it. That's one of the beauty of our platform. Any broker will try to chuck deals down your throat because he has to make like a commission out of it. And
Right.
that's the reality of life, right? You understand it because that's the business model. We take no commission whatsoever on none of the deals. So
Right.
what we really want to make sure is that we're connecting people that are like-minded, and they will do a deal if the deal is beneficial to both sides. We don't
Right.
take part in the negotiation. We don't push people to close the deal. What we make sure is that they can connect and have a conversation that is worthwhile, and they have the ability to determine if that's a deal they want to do, but not being involved in any way in the profits and the outcome of that deal that enable us to stay completely neutral.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now you say you're in Barcelona and you have 130 employees.
120. But if you give us a couple of months, probably it's going to be 140. So we can call
Okay.
it 130 in the middle.
So it keeps growing quite a bit. And I see you've been featured in the Financial Times. And so you're getting a lot of press and how this works. And you worked at Boston Consulting Group at one point as well, right?
I did.
So how did that prepare you for this?
Oh, it was phenomenal. And I spent 2 years at BCG. All the projects I've done really kind of helped me hone my business acumen. And the strategic view that you get on a business is a privilege because you're working with very high level managers that are extremely experienced in their field, and they are paying you to basically explain you their industry, and then you get a chance to really try to find concrete solutions. I loved being a consultant, and I have to say BCG has been really instrumental in making sure that Opportunity Network was born. Also by the fact that when we started the company and we needed to raise capital the first time, and we had just a piece of paper, the people that put in the capital were all my previous bosses at BCG that knew me. And so, we owe them quite a lot of capital. And when the business grew, actually we had an investment from BCG as the global corporation. So the same holding company that owns all the countries of BCG also made an investment into Opportunity Network. And when it comes to external shareholders beyond founders, they are among our largest shareholders. They hold a board seat with us, and we have a partnership with them where they help us distribute access to the platform as well. So it is a very, very deep relationship that we maintained over the years.
Very nice. Well, and certainly the investors are individuals or families or individuals in a family. And then the CEOs, now many of them are private CEOs though, right? Not private companies versus public, or are there some public?
Yeah, there are some public. Of course, there are more private because if you just look not by revenues, by head, the private market has extremely large volumes in terms of number of companies compared to the public markets. Only a tiny fraction of companies around the world are publicly traded. But that said, the proportion of publicly traded that are on our platform is similar to the proportion of publicly traded that are out there. And we have companies that are traded in the US, in the various exchanges like NYSE or NASDAQ and so on. But we also have members that are traded into less known stock exchanges. I was speaking last week with someone traded on the Taiwan Stock Exchange, just to name one. So
Right.
It's a really diverse crowd.
So if you have so many private market CEOs, is there some insight you think that's been developed throughout the network about running companies that the public companies could learn from. There's so many private CEOs. Is there some advantage that they have or knowledge that they bring to it that can help the public markets?
I think so. So here is the thing. All the trading that goes on publicly traded companies is based on the information that you get from publicly traded companies, which is highly regulated. And it's backward looking because you get information every quarter and talks about the quarter that is just over. And so as much as you can get a little bit of sense and projection and guidance on the following quarter, you really don't get much. So you have a 3 months backward looking view on a tiny sliver of the economy.
Mhm.
And what we see in the platform is what CEOs want to do in 6 months, in 9 months, in 12 months from now, and they're looking for a counterpart to do. And that's truthfully their intention because they're putting out a need, hoping to find a counterpart to execute it on. And at that point, the discussion starts and the due diligence starts, and the whole transaction may take 6, 9, 12, 18 months. So we get to see in advance a lot of what will be interesting. I'll give you an example. I'm sure that covering public markets, you've seen in 2021 the big rise of the SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies.
Right.
And in the beginning of 2021, it was already clearly a trend that could be observed. And if you look in Google Trends, the term SPAC became trendy, and you could see like the spike
Right.
around November 2020. So that is the time Google Trends was able to pick it up. I had the pleasure of speaking with the head of listing of the NYSE, and I had the pleasure of speaking with the CEO of the Italian Stock Exchange, which is a subsidiary of the London Stock Exchange. And I asked them the same question: where were you able to see that SPAC was going to be a thing? Like, they're insiders, right? And they said in one case May 2020, and in the other case February 2020. And of course, SPACs have existed for like 10, 15 years, but really knowing that the trend was going to be there, they saw it in February 2020 and in May 2020. On our platform, we saw a spike in the term SPACs in February 2019.
Okay.
That's a whole year earlier.
So earlier, so it's like an early warning signal. So how do you, so you say on your platform, so the members communicate on the platform and you're able to capture all that activity. Is that right?
Yeah, we basically see what people want to do in 6, 12, 18 months. And when we see enough people that all of a sudden are interested in something, we know that's going to be a trend. We see
Right.
that with things where they were like regulatory not allowed before, like we see a huge trend in cannabis, but that is at the same time where everyone else saw it because it was not available, and then it became available as a category. But things like crypto, we saw that there was a huge spike in demand way before crypto prices soared. So that, of course, is valuable information. We saw that biotech was going to be a thing in 2021 and 2022 as well in 2020, and so on and so forth.
Nice. So you saw these trends. So now that you see some of this information, is there anything that your network members can benefit from that knowledge? Do you communicate that knowledge with folks?
Yeah, so what we are doing now is we're analyzing this trend and kind of creating a detector for future trends. And we are planning of turning that insights into value that gets distributed to our members. And some people will use it to trade it on public markets. Some people will use it to chase the trend as entrepreneurs. But we believe that clearly there will be one more reason why members will want to be part of our network at all times, because you always are in the forefront of whatever will happen in the market.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, when you think of all the insights, are there any things happening now that we might all learn from?
Yeah, there are things that you look at the markets and you see things going one way, but you look at a platform and you see things going the complete opposite direction. Like we see that even stuff like semiconductor is now crashing over the last few weeks. But what we see on the network is people are just hoarding that stuff, like looking to find ways to increase their supply. So you get to see all these kind of mismatches. And you heard about supply chain and logistic woes in 2021. But despite you don't hear talking about that a lot recently, you still see a lot of demand for alternatives for transportations and the like, showing that the issue is not solved. And on the other side, you see that some trends that you see in the public markets are also confirmed in the private markets. So you do see crashing tech valuations. You do see less appetite for specific asset classes. So you do see some things that are happening in the private market that are matching the public market, but in some cases you really find a mismatch between what the private market is doing and what the public market represents.
Nice. Wow. Are there any insights you're able to share with us today, or is that private information?
Well, the semiconductor one is a good example. We do see a mismatch there. We do see a growing trend on sustainability, and you say, well, Brian, I knew that that was a trend for such a long time, but that has been on everyone's mouth for 3 years, but there was not as much of a pickup in terms of actual action. And now we're starting to see that pickup. So we started to see demand for sustainably produced goods. We started to see demand for companies that are acting in a sustainable way. And despite everyone was talking about sustainable and was talking about like socially conscious and like all the shareholder capitalism type of attitude, words were not followed by action. And now we're seeing that happening.
Right. Wow. So the crypto markets are starting to crash just in the last week or so. And, they've obviously been parabolic up until recently. So are you seeing any commentary on that from different members?
So we do see quite a lot happening in crypto, but we see both bulls and bears.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, there has been a time where crypto was like this huge ballistic trend on our platform, and
Yes.
everyone was looking to put money into it. And like if there was one bear, it was in a corner crying and being thrown kind of garbage can set.
Right.
But today you see a market that is way more kind of balanced and disciplined. So from what we can say, it looks like the initial euphoria may be gone, but despite that turned into a clear crash in valuation, it's early to say whether that is a bad thing, because it looks people have probably a slightly more rational and business-minded approach to it.
Interesting. Wow. So it's kind of an early warning signal, like we said, and it's kind of a unique opportunity to hear from business leaders. So these are some really good benefits of joining the network and being part of this, essentially a worldwide club.
Yeah, and the idea behind Opportunity Network is really not to be this exclusive platform where only very few individuals can access, like a World Economic Forum or whatever else. Our goal as a company, our purpose, is to make sure that every reliable CEO and investor gets equal access to business opportunities. So we
Yes.
want to create a place where it doesn't matter if you're sitting in New York, if you're sitting in Salt Lake City, if you're sitting in Milan, or if you're sitting in Zimbabwe, you have a plain level field where really what matters is your hardworking, your attitude, your ingenuity, and your talent, and your willingness to strive to put forward the best product, make the smartest investment, doing the best due diligence, looking harder to find the right deal rather than just like knowing the right person.
Interesting. Well, great. Any other trends that you can think of from your work that you see just in general in the business world?
Well, one more thing about crypto we see.
Oh, more crypto. Okay.
Well, one more crypto I can give you is we see slightly decreasing interest in the mainstream coins, and we see increased interest in more exotic coins. I don't know if that is speculation. I don't know if that is a good or a bad thing, but we do see more appetite for less known, and by less known I mean not top 5 coins.
Okay.
In terms of other trends, we do see CEOs really realizing the need for connectivity, and it's not just the need for Opportunity Network as a company; it's the need really to have a lot of resources available in terms of other companies, other people are to support. Because
Sure.
even speaking with CEOs, you realize that CEOs as investors have faced an amount of shocks over the last 10 years that has no comparison until World War II. And it's not just like the size of the shocks, is the diversity of the shocks. You know, you can go from geopolitical with like wars as the current one, or Brexit, or the economic crisis in Lebanon and in Sri Lanka, and the fact that former CIS countries are highly dependent on Russian economies, like all of that you see. But also you do see the wake of shareholder capitalisms, where the shareholders being way more demanding from an environmental standpoint, from a diversity standpoint, from advocacy standpoint. And then you do see challenges like the boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal, stopping the trade flows,
Right.
and in general supply woes, or the shortage of semiconductors, or the shortage of shipping, or the shortage of um, agricultural seed and soil from Ukraine that was not exported anymore. So you keep seeing more and more shocks that the system was not built to absorb. And we see that the CEOs that are successful are the CEOs that are able to turn their fortune in a short time by having access to reliable counterparts. Uh, because just running your business, closing your eyes and hoping for the best doesn't work. And that is as a reflection true also for the investors.
Yes. Wow. So you mentioned a little bit about this war in Ukraine with the Russians, and that has cut off about 20% of the world's grain markets, essentially. So the grain prices are going up. Are you seeing any other effects in the Opportunity Network from the war?
We're seeing a bunch. Well, first of all, one thing we did, of course, was to revoke access to our 3,000 Russian members. That was the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And we decided to give free access to Ukrainian members until the situation stabilizes. And
Okay.
one thing that shocked us is to see that we saw hundreds of members from Ukraine registering during the war, in some cases to find counterparts, and they got massive interest from the rest of the network because the rest of the network wanted to support them. But in many cases, they were sourcing things that were completely outside of their core business. Like your core business, imagine, is installing solar panels. You're like the biggest installer of solar panels in Europe. And all of a sudden, what you're sourcing is outdoor gear and first aid equipment. So one thing that we are really proud of is that we're seeing that we're able to support Ukrainian businesses in helping their countries, not only sustaining the GDP, but also sourcing first aid goods, getting them to countries that are close to Ukraine and then into the country. And when we look outside of the country, the impact that this had, we do see a lot of companies that are now struggling to replace, displace the supply chain. And part of that is, of course, the raw material productions, or commodities like grains and the likes. But Ukraine was, for instance, a very, very big tech hub. A lot of technology companies in Europe were outsourcing their technology to Ukraine. And there has been a heightened demand for third-party technology services coming from Europe when Ukraine was not able to operate in the
Hmm.
field. So that is a good example, for instance.
Interesting. Wow. It just the opportunities and ideas of knowledge just from that network of people who are out there making decisions every day is a very powerful thing. So this was your vision, Brian, huh?
It is, and at the end of the day, we wake up in the morning to make sure that everyone that is a legitimate CEO or investor can get equal access to business opportunities, and that includes the knowledge that comes with it. And we will not stop until we'll do it. And it sounds like a great number that we are at $500 billion worth of transactions, and by GDP we would be the third country in the world. but we dream of the day where every CEO will be leveraging our platform, and really we can create a true, honest to God, plain level field where everyone can play it fair and play it clean, and we'll have an equal starting point to make sure that what really matters is who you are and how hard you fight rather than who you know.
Nice. Well, we're excited to learn about all this, Brian, and I'm glad to meet you. Yes, I like your name, but I like your network better. And we're going to look into 4-Star joining the network, and then other wealthy investors and clients that we work with as well. It sounds like a great opportunity to meet movers and shakers around the world and do different investments, do deals that make sense for companies, and create efficiencies that weren't there before. Really exciting idea.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Yes. Well, great. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks for spending some time with us today, Brian, on the Today's Market Explained podcast and the 4-Star Media Network. And we'll look forward to checking in with you, and let's talk about 4-Star joining your network. And I look forward to seeing you down the road.
Indeed. And thank you very much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks so much. And thanks to all our listeners. We'll be back with another interview with a great guy like Brian and other movers and shakers in the economic system here in America and then around the world. And you're in Barcelona today, so we're now worldwide now as well because you're in Barcelona. So
indeed.
Thanks, Brian.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll leave it there. We'll be back soon.